Welcome into Pigskin Perspectives. It is time for another football recap. A day delayed due to the college football playoff ranking messing everything up because ESPN had to show college basketball over, doing it at its normal time, and then some technical problems that have gotten figured out just ended up being done a day later. So that means we're going to have back-to-back episodes. So today is going to be your recap. Tomorrow will be your preview. It was an interesting weekend of football. I will say that there were a lot of, completely getting off track. There was one event that happened in football today that couldn't have been talked about yesterday, but can be talked about today. Yeah. It was an interesting week of football. We had some really good games. We had some really awful games. But let's get into it. Let's recap it. Let's take a look back at that six-pack. As always, first game was the big noon game. It was Michigan traveling to Happy Valley to face off against Penn State. And it was the Wolverines walking away with a 24-15 victory against the Nittany Lions. James Franklin once again loses a game as a top 10 ranked opponent against another top 10 ranked opponent. It is a disaster for him. That dude cannot win at the highest levels of football. If you truly think about it, the 1 year that they did win the Big Ten, it was a down year. Actually, no, it wasn't even a down year. They escaped with a win against Ohio State, and that was your tiebreaker to get into the Big Ten title game. And Ohio State ended up making the playoff anyways that year. But Michigan goes in, Jim Harbaugh suspended, restraining order rescinded, and Sharon Moore cries on the sidelines while Michigan plays the victim once again. A role that they seem to be playing quite well, even though they are not the victims in this. They're far away from being the victim here. But they walk away with a 24-15 victory. J.J. McCarthy throws like 8 total passes in the game. So Michigan very much relied on the run game in this one. They really didn't need to rely on the passing game because every time they would run the ball, Penn State would give up 5 yards and Michigan could keep just running for 5 yards each play. And you end up with a final score 24-15. James Franklin's coaching malpractice in this game too. Disgusting. Mike Yurcich was the offensive coordinator, fired after this game. That pretty much sums this game up basically. It was Big Ten football. If you like it, you like it. If you think it's disgusting, you think it's disgusting. Moving on to the Pac-12, Washington takes one step closer to the Pac-12 title game as they once again escape a game. They win 35-28 against Utah at home. Utah falls for their third loss on the season. Washington, they are just such an interesting team. We'll get to the obviously the CFP rankings after we get done here, but they're making a case that they should be jumping some of these teams right now that the playoff isn't doing, but hey, whatever. But Washington, it feels like Washington can't keep skirting this line for this much longer. They're going to have 3 games remaining. I highly doubt they lose their last 2. They would have to lose both of their last 2 to not make it to that Pac-12 title. In fact, if they do win this weekend, they do clinch their spot in Vegas on December 1st. It is a slippery slope, these games. I will give them that. We'll obviously get into this preview later on in future episodes, but I just feel like Washington can't keep skirting this line of almost losing each game because Utah could have won this game. Stanford could have won the game 3 weeks ago. USC could have won last week. Arizona could have won earlier in the year. There's not. I think Arizona State. Arizona State was the other one. They can't keep skirting this line. Tennessee took the train. Well, I don't even know if there's a train from Rocky Top to Columbia, Missouri, but they ended up falling in this game 36-7. A absolutely amazing performance from Missouri in this game. Looked dominating. It helped their playoff ranking. We'll get to that. But Missouri looks like a really good team. I think if they played Georgia earlier in the year, when Georgia wasn't ramping up to what they are now, they might actually win that game. Obviously, who knows when it was played this year, which was beginning in November, if that was played in Columbia, who knows what happens? But results are results. Georgia got the win in that one. They're on to the SEC title. Missouri is very much positioning themselves for a New Year's Six bowl game, which is quite exciting for that program. Really haven't reached these heights since the 2007 season, when going into the last weekend of the regular season, it was number 1 versus number 2 at Arrowhead Stadium. Kansas and Missouri, yes, it's hard to believe, but Kansas and Missouri were number 1 and number 2 at one point. But Missouri has made a great comeback. Coach Eli Drinkwitz looking like a great hire in year 3, I believe he is there now. So yeah, like I said on Thursday, this game was only in here because of the over-under. It was Iowa-Rutgers. It was Iowa walking away with a 22-0 victory, which of course means the under hit. Good win for Iowa. What was the game of the weekend? It was number 9 Ole Miss traveling to Athens to face off against the number 2 ranked Georgia Bulldogs, and it was Georgia running all over the Ole Miss Run Rebels. It was a 52-17 drubbing for the Bulldogs. This obviously helped their ranking, which we are going to get to momentarily. And Ole Miss just didn't look like they should be out on that field with them. And finally, Oregon at home against USC. They get the 36-27 victory. The biggest worry for me right now with Oregon is the kicking game. It showed up in the Washington game, showed up in this game. I am very worried about that, because you do not want to be going into the end of November and December and having a game decided by a kick and you don't have a reliable kicker. That is going to be the life and death of this Oregon Ducks squad. Bo Nix put on an amazing performance. The whole Oregon team put on a great performance in this one. Shouldn't have been as close as it was. Ends up being close, but the Ducks walk away victorious in this one. So I've kept mentioning the playoffs. Let's take a look at what those rankings did. And we do have a new number 1. It is the Georgia Bulldogs. After that just absolute trouncing of Ole Miss, they move up to number 1 in the polls, with Ohio State now falling to 2. They had a great win against Michigan State over the weekend. It was, start to finish, dominating for the Buckeyes, but it wasn't enough to keep them at number 1. Number 3 is Michigan, obviously got that win over Penn State. Number 4 is Florida State. And then 5, 6, 7, and 8 all stay the same. It's Washington, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama. This is where I think we can get into a interesting discussion, because there was a lot of talk this week with that win for Washington over a ranked Utah, which they are still sitting at 22. They could have possibly jumped into 4 because they just have the better resume than Florida State does, which is 100% true. They end up staying at 5, which, everything is still to play for them. Everything is still to play for all these teams. This playoff picture could look very different come next week. Who knows? I know a known college football insider / personality, Josh Pate. He's always on the volcano theory that there's always one weekend in college football where it's like a volcano went off and the playoff or the rankings will not look the same at all compared to the last week. We have not had a volcano week in college football this year. We've had some rumblings. We've had a little tremor. We haven't had that full volcano week. It feels like we're ramping up to that. I don't know if that's going to be this week. I don't know if that's going to be next week. I don't know if that's going to be conference championship week. I feel it coming, though, because a lot of dominoes are going to have to fall. Who knows? It may be conference championship week. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are all most likely going to be playing in conference titles games. Georgia and Alabama already are faced off against each other. Ohio State and Michigan, the winner of that game the week before, is going to be in Indianapolis and most likely winning the Big Ten title. Florida State is most likely playing number 10 Louisville. Washington and Oregon are destined for a rematch. Texas, I honestly don't know who they would be playing in the Big 12 title game, but they will most likely be there. We're getting into some crazy scenarios now, but let's just say Ohio State wins against Michigan. They beat Iowa. Okay, so they're sitting at 13-0. They're in. Let's say Alabama wins the SEC title against Georgia. Let's say Florida State wins. That's fine. Let's say Texas wins. And let's throw Oregon in there. So now, really the only team you have clinched is Ohio State. And most likely Alabama. So we'll put 2 teams. Actually, maybe not even Alabama. Who knows? So you're going to have a 12-1 Georgia team who didn't win a conference title. A 13-0 a Florida State team. They are probably in. So if you do the 2 13-0 teams, they're probably in. It's those last 2 spots that become a big question. Do you put in a 12-1 Texas Big 12 champion, a 12-1 SEC champion Alabama, a 12-1 champion Oregon, or 11-1 Michigan non-champion? They probably fall out because then this just becomes a race of what conference champion gets left out. And if there are 2 conferences or 2 teams from the same conference that make this 14 playoff this year, if no chaos ensues, this playoff system is absolutely broke. It would be absolutely ludicrous if they don't make it. It should be 1 Big Ten, 1 SEC, 1 ACC, I guess, and then let the big, as much as I hate to say it, let the Big 12 and Pac-12 fight it out. But I don't know. This is going to be a very, very, very interesting race coming down to the wire here. So the rest of those rankings, you had number 9 Missouri, 10 Louisville, 11 Oregon State, who play the Huskies this week. They play the Ducks next week. It's going to be a big week for the Beavers. Big few weeks, I should say. The Nittany Lions at 12, Ole Miss at 13, Oklahoma at 14, LSU 15, Iowa at 16, Arizona 17, Tennessee 18, 19 Notre Dame, 20 North Carolina, 21 Kansas State, 22 Utah, 23 Oklahoma State, 24 Tulane, and number 25 Kansas. So given that is your college football talk, I could dive deep more into what's going to happen with the playoff scenarios. We'll save that for a few weeks from now when we do have a clearer picture. That probably will be that preview. Who knows? Let's get into the NFL. We had an interesting week. We had some awful games, and we're going to start off with two of the most awful games this season so far. The Bears get a 16-13 win over the Panthers on Thursday Night Football. Disgusting game. Tyson Bagnet wins his last start for the Bears. It sounds like Justin Fields is going to be back this week. So there's that. The Colts get a 10-6 victory over the Patriots in Frankfurt. Another just absolutely disgusting game. I can't believe I sat through most of that. Both teams looked awful still. The Houston Texans, I keep telling you, the Houston Texans are feisty. They might sneak into the playoff as a wild card. They get a 30-27 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. This Texans team is just so fun to watch, too. It's a lot of young talent. C.J. Stroud looks like an outstanding quarterback. He's going to win Rookie of the Year most likely. With the way he's playing, he should be in the MVP chase. He's not going to be, but he should be. Josh Dobbs leads the Vikings to victory once again. A 27-19 victory over the Saints. I'd kill to have Josh Dobbs on my team right now. We're going to get to that in a moment. I told you on Friday, this is a game the Browns find a way to win. Guess what? They found a way to win. They were down quite early. Team looked dead. It all looked awful. The Browns' second half, absolutely outstanding. Deshaun Watson plays his career game with the Browns in that second half. I don't think he had an incompletion the second half. Gets a 33-31 victory with a game-winning field goal. And hope finally springs eternal in Cleveland. It finally looks like this team is rounding into form. Deshaun Watson out for the season, broken shoulder. Hope. It's the hope that kills you. I don't know. I really don't. This team is cursed. I'm convinced of it. And the funny thing is, apparently his shoulder broke in the first half. Came out in the second half, was the best performance he's had as a Brown. I don't know. I really don't know. I got no words. You're down already. Your star running back. You lost week 2 of the season. Something like that. Now you're down. You're $240 million quarterback. You can't help but laugh. Best part is P.J. Walker isn't even starting on Sunday against the Steelers. It's going to be DTR. I don't know. Why we traded Josh Dobbs away, I have no idea. I truly don't. I got nothing. Let's move on. The Steelers get a 23-19 victory. They keep just finding ways to win. I don't know how. The Steelers are just being silly this year. They're going to find a way into the playoffs, and they're just going to be awful in it probably. But the Steelers are just funny, kind of not a good funny, just a funny, I guess. Then you had the Tennessee Titans traveling down to Tampa Bay. They would get obliterated, basically. Two bad offenses going up against each other, but it was the Buccaneers walking away with a 20-6 victory in this one. Will Levis, not good. Baker Mayfield, not great. What am I going to say? The 49ers get that bounce-back game finally. They finally look like the team that they were. They get a 34-3 victory over the Jaguars. The Jaguars were non-existent in this game. They looked awful start to finish. They just didn't seem to get anything going. The Lions traveled to Los Angeles to face off against the Chargers, and they walked away with a 41-38 victory after a last-second field goal that gets them the win in this one. There's a lot that I can say about this Lions team, and none of it's good. I think this is the most overrated team in second most overrated because the Dolphins are very much overrated also right now. I like to keep a fraud watch. Fraudulent teams, you put them on fraud watch, fraud warning, fraud advisory. We only have one team in fraud warning right now, which means it is a fraud team, and that is the Dolphins. There's 3 teams I think I have in fraud watch that haven't been upgraded to warning yet, but haven't been downgraded to advisory. One of them is the Detroit Lions. I need to find the stat really quick because the NFL put out a dumb stat after the game on Sunday because why not? The Lions are 15-4 since week 9 of last season. So this is week 10, I think, something like that. So it's about a season's length. And obviously week 9 is when they started turning around. They were like 1-6, 1-7 at the time, and they turned it around. So I did a little stat digging because I love doing that. I asked myself, I wonder how many of those 15 wins are against teams that were, at or above 500. So with the teams last year, if they finished above 500 or at 500 is impossible. But if they finished above 500, and then I took a look at this year's team so far, what their records are, if they're at or above 500. You don't want to know what the answer to that was? How many of those 15 teams were above or at 500? The answer is 4. 4 teams out of that 15 are above or at 500. That is absolutely insane. Yes, the Lions are winning games. You can only play who's in front of you. I get that 100%. The Lions have been helped by a very easy schedule. And again, they're winning games. I have to give them that. This team, if they go up against the 49ers, the Eagles, the Cowboys, they're not winning. I hate to tell you, they're not winning. You could say, well, they beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs were down Travis Kelce. They were down Orlando Brown, I think, on the defensive line. They were down 2 of their key players, and they only won by 2 or something like that. Lions very much on fraud watch. This game, I honestly kind of forgot it was even there. It was the Falcons and the Cardinals. It was the Cardinals walking away with a 25-23 victory. The Seahawks and the Commanders played a interesting game, to say the least. It was kind of disgusting football and then kind of entertaining football, kind of disgusting, back and forth, back and forth. It was the Seahawks prevailing with a 29-26 victory in this one. The Cowboys just they took the Giants to the back of the shed, and basically it was over for them. Tommy DeVito in his first start, awful. I don't think we see him again. Who knows? That was awful. And then we get to these 2 awful primetime games. The Jets at Raiders. It was the Raiders walking with 16-12 victory. Just disgusting performance of football. I don't know why. I said this on Thursday. I don't know why this didn't get flexed out. I truly don't. And then we have Monday night. The Bills, they win the game 22-21. But guess what? They had never mind. They forget scores. The Bills did not win because they had 12 men on the field on the last play of the game of a missed field goal, which is hilarious. Like, how does that happen? And it was the Broncos that walk away with 24-22 victory. Disgusting. Ken Dorsey gets fired because of it. Disgusting football all around. There was some non-disgusting football. 2 very good games this weekend. We previewed them on Friday. We'll take a look back at them now. It's the road to the Grey Cup. Our Grey Cup is set for Sunday. It's going to be the Montreal Alouettes against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Hamilton. Let's take a look back at the East Division final. It was the Alouettes going into Toronto against what I said was one of the best teams in CFL history. It was the Toronto Argonauts. Turnovers galore for the Argonauts in this one, and that was the main cost to them in this game. The Alouettes capitalized on those. I think they had 2 pick sixes in this game. They end up with the 38-17 victory. That defense for Montreal, wow. They made sure that they stayed in that game, and Cody Fajardo got it done on the offensive side of the ball when he needed to. One of the more shocking upsets in the recent playoff history as the Alouettes get the victory in this one. They go on to Hamilton. In the West, I said I hoped BC would keep it close. They tried their hardest. They just couldn't get there. This Winnipeg team is just a behemoth. They get the 24-13 victory over BC. They head to their 4th straight Grey Cup. They will be looking to make it 3 Grey Cups in 4 seasons. For a team prior to that hasn't won one since 91, it's looking pretty good for them to make that their 3rd in 4 seasons. The Blue Bombers are the big favorite in this one. We're going to preview it tomorrow, more in depth. But that is going to be it for this episode of Pigskin Perspectives, a delayed episode. Sorry if you were hoping for it on Tuesday. Did not end up happening. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you just stumble across it, hit like, hit subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. We'll be back tomorrow, obviously, for another episode. We'll be previewing the weekend, which includes a Grey Cup preview special. Hopefully you tune in for that one, and I hope to see you then.